Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank
Good,
you.
Good.
Had some good news and bad news.
Every day.
At least we have some good news too. But maybe we talk to ourselves with the good news. Every once in a while you get criticism and say, Ron, you're too optimistic. And then other people say, boy, I'm glad at least you don't give up. So we just have to do what we have to do. But today we're going to start off with, I guess in many ways it's a sad story, so it's bad news. Has to do with what happens after you get rid of a bad governor.
Yeah.
You know, that's one reason why I sort of softened my stand on term limits.
Yeah.
You know, I was all for it and voted for all, had legislation, and a lot of supporters strongly support it, and they still support it. But my conclusion was, you know, when it's voluntary, at least, the people who voluntarily gave up their seat and lived up to their principles, they were always much better than their replacements. So the whole thing is replacements are a risk too. Whether you impeach a president, what kind of a vice president are you going to get? And people should think about these things. But what I'm referring to here is they did get rid of a governor up in New York.
Yeah.
He overstepped his bounds, and he had to go, and he was run out of town. He didn't even get impeached.
Yeah.
So his record is clean.
Yeah.
So the new governor, Kathy Hochul, she's controversial. I mean, she is so bad, it looks like somebody on the internet yesterday said, bring back Cuomo.
Yeah,
so,
really.
But anyway, what I'm referring to, a lot of people probably have heard this. She gave a little talk the other day, a little pep talk, and she was explaining herself that she's a pretty important person. And here Coach goes, and the title on the internet was, I guess on Twitter, that she goes unhinged with a religious rant saying, the vaccine is from God, and I need you to be my apostles. That's a little risky there.
Yeah.
I don't think she was joking, so we better be careful. And but she follows up. She's consistent, at least with the description of what she's doing. Maybe a little bit of unhinged, because as usual, so many times we've pointed this out, that problems occur. You have people leaving school and lockdowns and teachers leaving, buses that can't haul people, and everything they do, they make it worse. So here she's closing down. She's closing down the hospitals in a way. You know, the hospitals might began firing and suspending healthcare workers. They wouldn't take all their shots.
Yeah.
The fact that they had natural immunity, which is better than all the shots in the world, you don't have to get natural immunity 6 times.
Yeah.
You don't even need a lot. As a matter of fact, you don't even get it twice, even if you wanted it. It doesn't work that way. So that just makes the conditions much worse. Even in the early months of COVID, you know, I complained a whole lot that it distorts the delivery of care, and that it exaggerates one element of care where if it were left to the market, they might not need that many people in the hospital. At the same time, a lot of people had surgery suspended. Matter of fact, we had a report just the other day showing how many, the cancer patients, I think, how many cancer, because they missed getting their tests and mammograms and all this. That you'll never know exactly how many, but you can come up with an estimate that it didn't help at all. And so what did they do? It seems like the worse things get, the more they emphasize the same thing. They're having a problem. People are quitting, and the hospitals, don't have enough help. So the best thing we can do is fire the remaining ones. They must be the best ones, but we need to get rid of them, you know, and that's what's happening. So that's what they're facing. That's why the individual says, bring back Cuomo, but no, they need to bring back, not bring in. They need to bring in some people who happen to believe in freedom, and the delivery of medical care can be done by the free market and through a doctor-patient relationship. But that's generally not on the agenda, but we have one story today where there's a group of doctors talking exactly about that.
Yeah, it's strange in New York, as it's strange in many places, and I think unhinged is the right word. But this whole pattern is, you kind of scratch your head, because they tried offering the vaccine, and the people who were looking forward to it, they rushed and they took it, the people who wanted it. But that wasn't enough, so they tried bribing you. Here, have some hot dogs, have some beer, have some donuts, have all this stuff, just take a shot, have some money. You want some money? Have some money. Then they tried pleading. Then they tried threats. Take the shot or you lose your job. And now they're trying God. God is on our side. It becomes this weird religious cult. And in fact, let's look at the first 36 seconds of the New York governor speaking to a church congregation. Tell me this is not one of the weirdest things you'll see all week.
During this time. And you know what? God did answer our prayers. He made the smartest men and women, the scientists, the doctors, the researchers. He made them come up with a vaccine. That is from God to us. And we must say, thank you, God. Thank you. And I wear my vaccinated necklace all the time to say, I'm vaccinated. All of you. Yes, I know you're vaccinated. You're the smart ones. But you know there's people out there who aren't listening to God and what God wants. You know this. You know who they are. I need you to be my apostles. I need you to go out.
It's unhinged. And Fauci, remember, he said a while ago, hey, if you attack me, you're attacking science. And now the governor of New York is saying, if you attack me and go against me, you're going against God. And here she says, we know who those people are. They're not the clever ones. They're the ones going against God. This is really weird stuff, Dr. Paul.
You know, I read the comments about her speech, but I hadn't listened to it till just now, and it's actually much worse.
Yeah.
I mean, she's more demented than I thought she was. I thought she might have been a casual mention, but boy, in a way, that was a fair warning to anybody that didn't obey God. You know, and she's God's representative. There's a little bit of sickness associated with that, and of course, it's going to make the whole problem worse. The conditions are going to get worse if you don't have people staying there. It's sort of like when the inner cities were blowing up and continue to blow up, there's still people out. Well, the best thing you can do is when everybody's burning and stealing and robbing, what we need to do is defund the police.
Yeah,
the good ones and the bad. Everybody has to defund them, and but don't let the people have guns to defend themselves, because that's illegal. That would be an illegal use of guns. But this is a real shame. So it might be a mental status from that state. But I imagine if I were forced to live in New York, I would live at least 100 miles from the East Coast, New York City, because I've been to New York, and there's some Western New York isn't so bad, you know. So there's some nice places there, but right now they don't get to run the thing. The population is that they get people like this. You can't fire. Yeah, I mean you can fire, but are you going to get anything any better? So you have to get people with different ideas, not with a different group of political consultants.
And on the second point that you made is she signed an executive order giving herself the power to fire anyone who refuses to, for whatever reason, religious, whatever, to take the shots. And this is, Matt Walsh had a good piece up. Let's look at his, a good tweet. Let's look at that first tweet, that first picture, because he really captures it well. Matt Walsh says, so here's the breaking. She says she will deploy medically trained National Guard troops to replace unvaccinated healthcare workers in the hospitals who will be fired tonight. This came out last night, and Walsh makes a great point. Artificially creating a hospital staffing shortage while simultaneously claiming that a deadly pandemic is overwhelming the hospitals. This is one of the most twisted and evil things that I've seen. And in fact, if everyone who thus far has not taken a shot is fired, that means she will have fired 82,000 hospital workers throughout the state of New York. Talk about creating a crisis.
You know, there's doctors in the guard unit. They're not trained to take care of complicated cases of COVID, which has been more complicated by the medications they're taking. So it's a very, very difficult thing. And to pick people out of the Guard, and all of a sudden, quite frankly, I don't think they're going to be very happy about that. They're going to have to follow the orders, but the orders don't solve the problems. What they need is a little bit of freedom of choice and let people make their own decisions on this. But firing them won't, and hiring the National Guard, and that isn't, I was in the Guard as well as on active duty, and I'm not going out of my way to blast the Guard. But in this case, transferring the physicians from the National Guard en masse over and thinking they can fill just like that, and it would be like overnight.
82,000 of them.
They won't even know where to park overnight.
So. And the other thing that's interesting, the irony is, from what I've read, that the Guard isn't even required as of yet to be fully vaccinated. So there may be a lot of those Guard people that aren't vaccinated that wouldn't be eligible. But I wanted to do one more clip before we move on, because maybe this will explain. I know, Dr. Paul, you're very sensitive and you don't like hearing this horrible news of potential corruption. But maybe this explains why the New York governor is so shot crazy. Let's look at this next clip. Governor Kathy Hochul's daughter-in-law is a top lobbyist at pharma firm. All in the family business, Dr. Paul. Now, I'm sure that doesn't have any influence on her decision.
She must have gone to a good college to learn that business acumen that she has there. That's really good, getting in. She's probably making a good living. I understand a relative of the president has made a pretty good living over the years.
He's a painter.
I don't know whether that'll continue, but it seems like it'll continue just like it continues with Hillary. People will sort of remember about it, but nobody ever charges individuals like that unless they spoke at one time somewhere to Donald Trump.
That's
then you better watch out. Fair and equal, sure. So are we okay on going in to look at something a little bit along this line, but maybe positive side?
Yeah. In fact, we could even put up that next clip just to show readers what we're talking about.
This one, they had a little meeting in Rome, which is down the street, We're talking about the real Rome. So they're coming alive again. The Roman Empire is coming alive. 3,000 doctors and scientists arrived there because and these were academicians. These weren't taken off the television screen that were there and worked for drug companies, but they went there to make a statement, and they did. But 3,000 is very, very impressive. But the main purpose was to point out how foolish it's been, and what they've been doing. And then there was a declaration, and then they had their whereases and therefore, But the main thing in therefore that what I got was, and this is what I liked, they emphasize what you need is doctor-patient relationship to practice medicine. This way we have the corporations working with the government and the bureaucrats practicing medicine. Then they wonder why it isn't working. And they've invented a way of delivering medicine that when you make a mistake, absolutely everybody's going to suffer, including others too that aren't even supposed to be involved. So it does in a way give you a hint on what it's like when a country becomes Sovietized, when it's totally socialist or communist. The medical care is pretty good for those who run the country. They always have their private physician, but most of the time, the only thing it does for some people is they have to get out and read some holistic efforts, because I think we don't have enough emphasis on that, and people have to do it. In fact, even in this case we're talking about, just think of the people that went, they didn't want to deal with all these vaccines and all, and they went with a more a holistic approach of talking about exercise and vitamins and nutrition, and the record shows, at least the way I read it, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, this is right up your alley, because the emphasis here, now it's actually over 4,100 doctors that have signed.
They're signing on, right?
It's increasing, but the emphasis is on, as you say, the Hippocratic Oath combined with the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship. And here's one sort of in the intro of the statement. They talk about how They believe that many have died from COVID as a result of being denied types of early treatment. It says the declaration is a battle cry from physicians who are daily fighting for the right to treat their patients and the right of patients to receive these treatments without fear of interference, retribution, or censorship by government, pharmacies, pharmaceutical corporations, and big tech. That doesn't sound so unreasonable. Let us treat our patients as we see fit.
Boy, I wonder what the governor will think. I wonder if she'll read it.
She'll call God up.
Because we do have a couple governors that it makes a lot of sense to if it doesn't take too much to find them, but there's too many that are probably, I put them in the category of indifferent. Yeah, I sort of like that, I like this, but I can't take on the world, I can't take on the federal government. It's going to disrupt the payment system, and we have to, just like in the schools, they have to report students, so they have to go out and round up their students to get their reimbursement. That's what they have to do in medicine too. They don't drag people in and decide that they have a certain disease. This is well known. It's been documented. Doctors admit it that they come into the hospital for other reasons, and they do a test, and they say. And they're told, is it a test positive? The test is positive, so they get on that particular list. And that is not the way you should practice medicine.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've talked a lot about Israel because Israel, for better or for worse, has been kind of the world's lab. You got to feel a little sorry for the Israelis, but they've been forced to get the shot, and then we're forced to get another one, they're forced to get a booster now. And we were wondering, are they going to rise up? Are they going to get sick of this? And we can even put up this next clip. This is from Steve Watson at Summit News. Yes, they are finally. They are sick of it. The headline is Israelis rise up against vaccine passports after being told more shots are needed to be considered fully vaccinated. Remember, they said, hey, just get the 2 shots. We're going to go back to normal. And they were good, obedient Israelis. They stood in line and they got their 2 shots. Then the government said, no, from now on, if you don't have the booster, you're not considered vaccinated at all. You're as bad as those dirty anti-vaxxers. And so they did get that 3rd one, but now they're being told that you need to get at least 4 shots. And I think that may have been the straw that broke the Israelis' back, because they took to the streets and said, no, this is enough. We're tired of this.
We have said it many times, and many others have said it too, that this need to continue this process on people who have been vaccinated and to turn it around. So I'm fully vaccinated, but I still can't stand the danger of the non-vaccinated. They're the dangerous people. They're the evil people. They're not on God's side at all. They're out there to kill us. So, and I got to thinking, well, every time they do this, every time they close out somebody, whether they're vaccinated or not, or whether they're taking a risk or not, they're actually living proof that these people don't believe the vaccine's worth a nickel.
Yeah, that's the weird
They're up
part.
to 3 and 4 shots. The president does it, sets the example. So, and there are some people that actually said that you'll never get it. You'll never get a vaccine that's going to be perfect. It's that type of thing. We have, I think even as a kid, before I was in medicine, I used to wonder, why do people keep getting colds? There are vaccines and things, but it's in that category. But they keep saying, that we have to keep looking, and what they're doing though is, I think they're living proof that they don't themselves believe deep down in their heart that the vaccines protect them from anything.
Yeah.
And yet, you don't hear that very often explicitly said on regular television. But obviously more people are waking up to this effect because people are going out, the numbers are getting better, people are becoming more optimistic. We're seeing the larger crowds. So, I think things are not over yet.
And the thing that almost seems like they want a crisis, and we haven't really talked about it on the show, maybe you and Chris will on a Friday, but this whole crisis of the supply chain and all the containers that aren't being unloaded and aren't being transported across the country. And a lot of this is man-made. And in fact, the next clip is our 4th story, and this is a man-made crisis. And this is just an example of what's happening around the country where they have vaccine mandates. If we can put that next one up. This is from Business Insider. Dozens of Massachusetts state police officers are quitting over the state's COVID-19 vaccine requirement. They're just walking off the job, Dr. Paul.
You know, that episode and the other ones that we point out where people are disgusted, and even these people meeting in Rome, for me, that's when you hear, see this is real. We still have enough freedom that we get these messages out. But for me, this is the reason why people shouldn't give up. You know, it's so easy. And I really sympathize with people who are so pessimistic. They're terrified by this, and then they put it on their kids, and they walk around. They've ruined their own lives, but they had help. They were pushed that way because of the other. But when you see all these good things happening, teachers rebelling and parents rebelling, and they won't submit, policemen rebelling, and earlier we had another one where the police just it was in Italy.
Yeah, that's
they just
up,
took their helmets off and joined the people who were not submitting, and they were supposed to stop them, and they joined them. So I think there's reasons why people just shouldn't give up, because the truth is we don't know the future, and neither does anybody else. But I work on the assumption, although I don't know the future tomorrow, the next day, that there are certain rules that are followed, that if you become completely insane, no good will come of it. And it's in economics. There are economic laws, like if you print too much money, the money becomes worthless and the prices go up. But you don't know what day that's going to happen and who's going to suffer and who's going to benefit. So there's a lot of unknowns, and that's what's happening now. There's a lot of unknowns, but the big principle is that when you see people awakening and willing to speak out, and there was the recent meeting at another school board meeting, standing up to the school board, and it's amazing how the school boards don't know how to react. They can't stand it. All they can do is try to shut up, don't do this, and close down the meeting.
Yeah.
They don't know how to handle the truth. So if we stick with the truth, I think that we will make an impression on some people.
And they want to tar the people who are standing up and resisting. They're just a bunch of dirty anti-vaxxers. But the interviews that I've seen with people that are doing that, I haven't really heard anyone say, I'm against vaccines, it's terrible. Most of them are arguing for the principle that I get to choose myself what kind of medicines I take, what I put in my body, and how I live. But they want to demonize them. So some governors actually literally want to demonize them about this. But that really is not what we're talking about. It's not what we're seeing. The other thing you mentioned, excuse me, you mentioned the other issue, which is a big problem that the Biden administration and others are having, which is that they are sending a message that the vaccine is not very good. And that's a real problem. And we're seeing it over and over. And in fact, I'm going to do a couple of quick tweets here just to show what we're talking about. Let's look at the next one. Now, this happened yesterday. The president made a big dramatic show of getting his booster shot. And so moments ago, President Biden receives Pfizer COVID-19 booster shot. Dan Horowitz, who writes over at The Blaze, said, so it doesn't work? If he's got to get more of it. And let's look at the next one then really quick, if we can. Because this is the point we're making. He's getting a shot, and then someone comments, vaccinated, he's wearing a mask, and he's getting another vaccine shot. Nothing about this image inspires confidence in the vaccines. It's a real problem. So let's turn actually to Dr. Marty Makary, who we've seen in Wall Street Journal. He's at Johns Hopkins. Let's put that next clip on. And he actually confirms what these earlier tweets were suggesting. He said on Fox yesterday that, this is Dr. Makary from Johns Hopkins, quote, if you look at the blanket and indiscriminate vaccine mandates that come from the White House, after they have been announced, the vaccination rates on a daily basis have gone down 20%. So the pushing, the yelling, the screaming, the drama is actually causing people to stop and be more hesitant. That's what he's seeing, and that's what's really interesting. But There's one group that is very, very happy. Let's look up the last tweet in this little series. These guys are thrilled. Let's look at this chart. Oh, here is the stock for Moderna. Nothing to see here, just Moderna stocks skyrocketing by 500% over the last year. Grab those boosters.
They must have gone to a government business school and one of our government-run universities to teach you how to make some money doing that. But you know, when you showed the picture of the president getting the shot with his mask on, and typically speaking, well, I guess we've seen it. There's always pictures of immediately after doing something else, they take their masks off. That even makes it worse. I mean, he makes the point that that he still has to wear a mask even though the vaccine, you know, is supposed to work. So I think what they're doing there is just showing that they don't trust it. And as soon as they're out of it, it's theater.
Yeah.
It's playing the political game. So.
Well, I'll close out with a couple of little video clips because one is horrible, and I mean, I'm going to say I think Australia is probably worse than North Korea, worse than a lot of places. It's a little bit shocking, so I'll caution people. This is a little bit shocking. This is going on in Australia. Let's put up this. It's a clip. It's a video clip. There are two of them. The first one is Australia. It's just 8 seconds. When they say they need to stamp out COVID, they mean it literally. It's hard to watch that. That's enough. Just that one time is enough. This is not an exception. I looked through. I spent a lot of time looking, and this is actually the rule. There's so many people that the police are just pounding to death in Australia. It's crazy. But we got to end with the good news story. You alluded to it earlier. This is the other side of the coin, and this is what happens when you have a civilized people in a civilized country. Let's look at this clip from Italy. There's a big protest. The cops are there. They could have started cracking heads, but they didn't. Let's expand that. So the police actually took off their riot gear, put it down, and in solidarity with the protesters, and they were greeted very warmly, pat on the head, and there's a lot of people there. So this shows the other side. This shows that there is some humanity left.
And why we should not give up.
Yes.
Right? Because there will be a time they will shift their viewpoint. But they have to hear it. Somebody has to stand up. When they go to the meetings, a lot will show up, but not everybody's going to have the confidence and are anxious to be the spokesman. So when somebody does, guess what? The hoodlums, the ones that are running these shows and all these authoritarians, they're like wimps.
Yeah.
They're like a bully. You know, if you face up to a bully, all of a sudden he fades away. He doesn't want exposed for the wimp that they are. So
I'm all done. Yeah, that's
okay. I wanted to follow up on something you said about medicine and care, because so often you make the point very strongly that we haven't taken the position that vaccines are bad, you should do this and this and this, that what we want is freedom of choice. And it's going to vary because doctors vary things differently, treating the same thing. And sometimes you have 2 or 3 choices, and sometimes they're more likely to satisfy one patient over the other. So the delivery of freedom can vary. And this was a point I made, that the young people especially were they kept their eyes and ears open, and they understood what I was saying. That in freedom, what you're doing is allowing you to make your choices. Because I personally would say that I don't know how to run your life. I don't even want to run your life, and I don't know how to run the economy, and because I don't know how to do it. And but there are things that you should know about it, and it seems so foolish for me as a president to want to run the country and be an internationalist and tell other countries what to do, no matter what they're doing. And I always argued the case that in any area like this, if you don't like what people are doing, you consider what they're doing is immoral and wrong and dangerous. The job is to persuade them otherwise, and that's what the Prime prime purposes of parents are, good parenting, is that the parents are supposed to teach most of that. The big crisis that we have now is, the nuclear family isn't as healthy as it was in the past, so there's a lot of other people influencing, and now we have people saying that it should be the government that looks after our children. It's a community activity. So, but it's the freedom that we want, not the final decision that will tell you how to run your life. It doesn't work, and that's why in the early years, at least up until the beginning of the 20th century, we did pretty well in defining and protecting the principles of liberty, but we've been living on borrowed time. We live on borrowed time. It's a mixed bag. Freedom produces great abundance of wealth, and then when the people decide that they don't have to worry about it, freedom is automatic, and they ignore it, all of a sudden they start consuming. It was true in the Roman Empire. It's over a consumption of wealth. And the consumption of wealth of this country is also measured by the destruction of the value of the dollar. What used to take $1 to buy something, now it might be $100 or $10 or whatever. So we're consuming wealth, and this is why it's really weird. It's one thing that demonstrates this is sort of mysterious, that people are out of work. They claim they want jobs. There are more jobs offered, and nobody wants to work. But this is a distortion of things. People get mixed up, and people are being paid not to work. And but long term, the country will get weaker. And I think it's a result of it first becomes less moral, and they lose moral principles, and get all fouled up on the rule of law. And then you end up with what we have now with our judicial system and the FBI and the CIA and all these other things that are so detrimental to us. But that can last for a long time, and I think especially in the last 50, 60 years, we have been consuming wealth, and that's why things are going to get much worse, because eventually it's not going to be handed out to just by printing more money. Everything, they're talking now about 5, 6, 7, and some people say $8 trillion we need to appropriate, because that will take care of everybody's needs. And at the same time, that will be the problem that the people have, because it will actually contribute to the destruction of wealth. Destroy liberty, and you will destroy wealth as well. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.